Very much, Melinda. I appreciate the introduction. I'm really beyond honored to be here in your inaugural meeting of the year. Um, it really touched me to see that what Adam had read there, and that's basically the foundation of what this group is about. And I got to tell you, it really it struck a chord with me and really kind of rung through me. I first want to say that my name is Duane Slocombe. I'm a chef. I've been a chef for over 30 plus years. I'm from Montreal, Canada. And I think it doesn't matter what city you're in or what country you're in, chefs, cooks, servers, anybody in this industry kind of goes through all the same beatings, whether it's the exact same, I don't know, but I really want to be able to honor what Adam read there in such a way, because I think we're all in that same boat. And I know I definitely was. To start off by saying I'm in a rare state right now, and I have been for quite some time. But I can easily say, not even 13 months ago, I was well done, extremely well done in that area. And I think I just want to kind of just jump into it. My story is not any examples of per se the restaurant industry, but it's just been my journey for the past 13 months. And I think, most of us already know this, and I know a lot of you have probably heard this. In fact, I know you've heard this, but maybe this will be the first time you're going to hear it, and I hope it's going to sink in a little bit. Your next level of life, love, abundance, income, lives on the other side of your biggest fear. And sometimes that fear, that pain, that obstacle, we don't even realize we have built a little barricade around it. And it's like, we're doing all these things quickly and trying to get things done in a really panicky manner. And this thing is just kind of living off to the side there. It's just kind of hovering. It's a little dim light. It's there, but you don't want to look into it because it's painful. But I'm really going to encourage you and anybody else that's in this position to take a look on it. I want you to take a look at your biggest fear in a head-on kind of fashion. And I also want to give you a new way, a new framework that will change that forever. And I'm going to share it through my own personal experience, how I faced my biggest fear head on. And I really want you to understand, I'm doing this so you could do it too. I'm sharing my most personal moment ever in my life. And I'm doing that so that if you were to ever do this, you would know it's easier for you to open up about yourself, and then you can expose a few things a little bit easier down the road. The thing that scares you the most in life is the dragon that you have to slay. Let's face it head on and find out what that one thing is that can solve all of your biggest fears, your biggest issues. And so I'm going to go through this and show you through my eyes how I did it. I'm going to share the circumstances that I was in, first of all. 13 months ago, I had just separated from my best friend and fiance of over 10 and a half years. It was absolutely devastating to me. I can still feel it now. The pain and hurt was like nothing close that I've ever gone through before in my life. I left my restaurant of over 2.5 years that I put everything into, like 7 days a week, honest to God, 100+ hours a week for those 2.5 years. I left my career of over 30+ years as an executive chef. I was jobless. I had $250 to my name, and I was stressed like you can't even imagine. And I thought anxiety was honestly going to be the end of me. I was having some pretty massive attacks. I thought at the time was going to make my dark place that I was already in even darker. That's how bad the attacks were coming. And that's when I finally decided to go see a psychologist. Again, I'm sharing this so that you can really dig down inside yourself if you want to do this. Just to be clear, I've faced challenges before in my life, struggling businesses, personal finances, working the hours that we do in this industry, and developing relationships, and those hardships that go along with it always come along in this industry, right? So I wasn't really a stranger to adversity. But when I went to go see the therapist for this first session, it's really an evaluation, kind of a snapshot as to where you're at in your life. And so I told her, honestly, where I was at. The pain that I was feeling was a 10 out of 10. The shock I was feeling was definitely a 10. How it felt like the whole world was unraveling and I was being swallowed up by it. My anxiety had gone to such a level that my sweat glands were just turned on all the time. I would literally have to change my shirt 3 times a day, not just because like a little perspiration, but it was like a full-on workout coming from the gym kind of sweat. And I could have just been sitting in a chair. I had to wear socks all the time, again, because in my place I had hardwood flooring and my sweat glands were on full tilt nonstop for I don't know how long, almost a month, maybe 2 months, that my feet were sweating so much that it felt like I'd just come out of the shower. So I had to wear socks inside my place because I would slip and fall in my apartment because of the hardwood flooring. Had I not put on those socks, I know for sure I would have gone down a couple times carrying things really a lot harder than I did. And my state of mind was just as troubling. I couldn't keep a thought for more than a few minutes. Though I really didn't feel I was going to harm myself, I can honestly say I definitely thought of things that I would do if I was to. And that was the point that the doctor cut me off. Just 20 minutes into my very first session with, with a psychologist. And she immediately told me I have to go see my doctor. And so I hopped in my car and booked off down the road. And in the meantime, she got on the phone, asked for the doctor's number and called ahead. And by the time I had gotten there, she'd kind of given her observations behind me and was really concerned for me. And unbeknownst to me, my doctor had actually called the psychiatrist that was across the hall just because he heard this information, was really concerned by it. Well, let me fast forward a little bit more because I could speak for hours just about that date or just that period. And I'm just going to fast forward to the part where I was talking to the psychiatrist and discussing my mindset. Even through all of this, I knew I had a purpose to go on. I really did. But I had basically let myself convince me that I was on a timer to accomplish any of these things that I wanted to achieve. Like after it was a month after all this had gone down, and I felt like I would find a new career, fix myself from within, and get my best friend back into my life within a month. And I didn't have a specific date per se, but I felt again that, again, that's what we do in the industry, that all we know is just go full tilt and full throttle, that if I just busted my butt off, and work like a maniac, I could get really where I wanted to and the goal that I wanted to have. So yeah, I know that's kind of silly in hindsight, but I wasn't thinking so clearly, right? I just felt I needed to get some things done in like 2 months top. And if I couldn't, well, yeah, I was the ultimate failure. Not much else was in store for me. That's how I was feeling. And that was the point that the doctor said, okay, well, that about does it. It's time for you to go away to a place for 7 to 10 days for a start. And I was like, whoa. I kindly refused immediately. And first of all, it was just because I wanted to get the heck out of there. I was thrown for a loop. That caught me off guard. But then after quite a bit of talking with my doctor and the psychiatrist, and them trying to convince me about this, I was actually able to kind of calm down and articulate what I was feeling, and that I had a bigger purpose and a bigger meaning to go pursue in my life. I felt that. And then they finally agreed once they heard this is where my state was at. But wait, my day gets so much worse than that. This is not even close to the end of my second worst day in my life. I'm going to fast forward quite a bit more just to the end of the day. To the end of that day, it was about 11 o'clock at night. I'm sure my mind was racing. I was back at my new 300 square foot basement bachelor apartment. And honestly, the rest of the day, I was just trying to wrap my head around what had happened over the last month. And especially today, 3 doctors kind of shipped me off and kind of counted me out for the call. And I was like, wow, man, this is crazy. I was going a little bit crazy in my place too. Obviously I started pacing and the mind starts taking off even worse. Now understand, it was about 11 o'clock at night and I decided to go for a walk because the insides just seemed like the walls were creeping in on me. I had to get out. And I'm sure most of you know that, or those that are in your area, Melinda, what winter is like in January. But in Montreal, our winters are quite chilly in this area. But I knew I couldn't stay inside my apartment. So I knew I just had to get out, bundle up and go for a walk. And so I went for a really long walk and I ended up by the St. Lawrence River. Again, not sure if you're familiar with the Montreal area, but it's a fairly large river that goes around the whole island of Montreal. Like it's a big river. It's a big waterway. Now, you really couldn't tell that it was a river at that point in time because it had frozen over. It was January, but believe me, it really was. It's a big river. And I sat down on the edge of it, or at least what I thought was the edge of it. And I didn't plan to go there in my walk. It's just after a couple of hours, that's where I ended up. And that's just where I happened to figure I better sit down for a bit. And I didn't go there to think, but just like my sweat glands, my brain was going off like a jet fighter too. But I ended up sitting down on the snow-covered rock, or at least I thought it was a snow-covered rock. And I sat down because I was so tired. Like I had never been that tired in my life. I thought like just a month before, when I finished working in the restaurant after 2.5 years and 100-hour weeks, that was tired. Not at all. Take all that and then add 4 weeks of just full on anxiety, no sleeping, adrenaline running through my body nonstop for 4 weeks straight. But I was finally able to calm myself down a bit while I was sitting there and was able to start putting together some thoughts of what I wanted to do. And no, I wasn't cold at the time because again, my adrenaline was still pumping, but I was able to bring it down a bit. We're used to that juice in the industry. So the adrenaline was also helping me think a little bit clearer at that point in time. But I finally got to a point where I was able to decisively come up with a plan with what I was going to do and how I was going to move forward. Now, I was still scared as hell. I still felt fearful. I was still unsure, but this was a really good plan, and I thought I would do my best and try my best to make it happen. And then, this is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. I heard this really loud crack and then felt a really big thud. And at first, I didn't know what was going on. So I started looking around, and then I noticed what it was. This whole time, I thought I was sitting on the edge of the river on this rounded off rock because, look, it was nighttime, snow covered, and it was completely dark out. I hadn't realized I'd actually walked way out onto the riverbed. Not the bed, but out onto the river. The rock that I was actually sitting on was actually where 2 ice floes had met, and one of them had pushed up. And I guess with a little bit of time and weather, the wind had blown it, snowed, so it just rounded over. So I just thought, okay, it was a rock. And then that loud cracking noise was the ice that I was standing on. It was starting to separate. And the loud thud that I felt wasn't actually moving up against the ice that I was sitting on. And I gotta tell you, about 1,000,000 things went through my mind in like a flash. It brought me to reality really darn quickly, and I started running my butt off in the direction of the shoreline. Look, I got back, okay, no problem. I ran, and I probably ran a lot farther than I needed to, but this kind of shook me into another world. But then and as I got there, I just kind of collapsed. I just literally fell down on the ground and I was like, whoa, that was intense. But just like when I realized where I was initially when all this happened, and like in that instant, everything came to reality and I knew I had to book out of there real quick, the same thing happened to me when I collapsed, and everything became crystal clear. Exactly what I had to do. Nothing in my life had been that scary. Nothing in my life, even everything that was going through before, all of it, nothing came close to the fear that I just went through at that moment. Now you may be thinking, wow, Duane, this is some really personal stuff here. What the heck does this have to do with sharing in this meeting today? Just stick with me here. I promise you that this is something that transformed my life. And I want to share it because I think it can transform anyone's life if they just kind of go through with me on this. So stick with me, okay? So what was I doing in these 4 weeks after my separation and leaving the restaurant and whatnot? I was stacking things against me, but I wasn't doing it like, just a couple bad things there. I was packing up things against me like I was on steroids and just making this big wall around me and capturing myself inside it. All of my anxiety kept on compounding off of each other. Because I thought I wasn't going to come out of my whole situation, I was feeding into my fear about failure. I was feeding into my fear about not being worthy. I was feeding into my fear about not being smart enough and able to succeed at my own efforts. It was just creating havoc in my life, right? Not sleeping more than, I don't know, a couple hours a day. These were the problems I was having. The problems that I was going through was all the negative talks with myself, feeding my inner villain. I was so scared about not being able to take real steps forward towards my success and fail before I even got started. I was also thinking about how can I conceive about getting back with my best friend if I can't even find a job? Who the heck is even going to consider hiring me now in any field? Because A, I'm an emotional mess, and I'm standing here sweating like a fool, not even doing anything. So they're going to look at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Another thing I was stacking against me is how will you ever find anything that will inspire you and fulfill you in your life? You just left your career of over 30 years, which you dedicated your whole life to. You were really happy at it at one point, and you were fantastic at it too. How are you ever going to find anything to compare to that when you're this old in your life and your opportunity to start over was years ago? Are you going to end up having to work 100 hours a week and maybe two or three jobs just to make things work at minimum wage just to make your life? You know, are my friends and family going to think I was the biggest loser because I'd screwed up so bad in my life? I started to think about my biggest fear that I had when I was a chef. And that was to have to go back to the industry and work there until I was about 7 years old, slaving away in a kitchen. And honestly, this was something that I saw time and time again in this industry and swore it wouldn't be me. Honestly, this was something that would wake me up in the middle of the night when I was a chef. That's how fearful it was inside my life. Now, all of these things, they were driving me insane. Like they were literally driving me insane. I was thinking and obsessing about all those things that could go wrong. Now, this could be happening to you too right now, or somebody in your life, in some area in your life. You may be wanting to quit your job and do your own thing. You may be wanting to drop out of university and pursue something else. You know, if you want to go from an employee to owning your own business, as an example. Like all these things that are making you scared, afraid, or fearful. But what are the solutions that you could start working on right now? Well, for me, I needed to start to meditate. I absolutely had to try and get my anxiety in some kind of order and under control. There was no way I could function at anything with my anxiety the way it was. I started to exercise, and again, this was also to help cope with the anxiety. But then I started journaling every single day. And this, I cannot say enough how much it helped me because now that I was alone, it actually felt like I had somebody to talk to and have a real honest conversation with. I started seeing the psychologist once a week. I started looking into things that would make me as happy and feel fulfilled. And once I discovered that I wanted to be a coach, I went into full motivation. I was looking into teaching, self development, helping others, giving back. I was learning, I was writing, I was reading, I listened to podcasts of autobiographies. I called my friends to say hi. I tried to accept the pain, and then I started to see a compelling future in me. Now, I did all those things so I could squash the problems that I was having, right? And I think we all do this because all of these were possible solutions and they were moving the needle within inside me without a question. But it still didn't seem like I could get anywhere quickly with this. I was looking like it was going to be years of pain and years of turbulence at this pace, right? So I started to look other ways to be able to speed this up. In this industry, I think we're all pretty intense when it comes to work. So I was really wanting to go all in on this and see how I could get results in an exponential way. I felt I didn't have time to restart everything in my life and start from the beginning of my life. I needed to do something that accomplishes a lot and a lot right now that could solve my problems really quickly. And how could I solve this? Because if I don't, I felt that those negative problems will start to creep back in and take over, and I'll be right back where I was before. I won't be able to make the money, feel confident, etc. And then I thought, could there be one thing that could solve all of that? And I was like, wow. Now, this is a pretty cool thought process because could there be one thing that could solve all those negative thoughts I'd stacked up against me and wipe it away? And when I figured out, it came to me. It came to me like a lightning bolt. It was like my ship. My ship was in this little bay, riding the waves, and it was okay. And it was moving around all fine. And everything was good. But over to the left of me, there was a hurricane brewing. Like just the most massive storm you've ever seen, the darkest clouds. And you could see the winds were just whipping everything up. The rain was coming down so hard, it was coming in sideways. That's how big the storm was. It was the roughest seas in the world, too. And I knew that the only way I was going to get from here to my next level in life was that I was going to have to take my ship out of the bay, take my ship right into the storm. And I'm telling you, I went into that damn storm. And the day I discovered the one thing that can make the difference, my ship punched through the other side of that storm and I was in paradise. It wasn't just a nice, calm sea. It was the most magnificent, serene place on earth. The next day I woke up and I can remember it like it just happened to me. I get goosebumps talking about it now. And everything had changed forever. Everything. Once I discovered the one thing. And in this circumstance, the one thing was being the absolute perfect version of what I have always wanted to be. No matter what it took, that was the solution that would take care of every single one of my problems. Every single one of those negative thoughts were creeping inside my head. It would take care of it in one fell swoop. Being a 70-year-old cook, having to work 3 jobs to make their ends meet, friends and family thinking I was a loser or for screwing up everything, starting over in life, finding something that will fulfill me, getting a great paying job, and finally, how do I get my best friend back in my life? This was it. And this sometimes can be the part that we screw up. So now, how do I make sure that this becomes a reality? Because this is the one thing that could take my obsession off of all of my problems and make it go away. Now it becomes, how do I obsess about the one thing to make it a reality? And that was when I turned all of my focus onto me. And what did I started off with all these ways of seeing the perfect version of me. I started to look at what moved me, the needle movers within inside me. And I found out about coaching. And I got 4 certifications, plus a 5th one in learning how to teach masterminds from Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. I took a course on how to build a course online so I could produce a course. I studied like a madman on what makes us succeed and what keeps us stuck. I took massive action on getting into shape so I would have an abundant amount of energy, so I could spend 12, 14, 16, 18 hours a day studying. I got so hypnotized about how to develop an unstoppable mindset. I researched how do we really get to a place of enlightenment? And I started doing volunteer work 4 to 5 times a week. I applied. I went through an interview process, which was like 4 exams in French, which I'm okay in, but boy, did I have to study a lot more information to be able to pass to get hired at this job that I was really going for. And I started to coach people about overcoming hurdles in their life. And I built an online course in the middle of the pandemic and I launched the new business. These were the solutions to all the problems I had. It was all based off of the one thing, and that's all I had to do was to focus on that. That's all I was obsessed on. Even if it seemed like I wasn't able to pay bills at times, but I found a catering gig here and there, I needed to focus my energy on being the best I could. And I wanted to be in a life that was going to be all the difference in the world. So I want to share something with you now, today. Now, 13 months after I started my journey, I got notified I'll be starting my new job soon. My doctors have given me a clean bill of health. Today, honestly, I am so happy. I'm confident. I'm in good shape. I'm sleeping like a baby at night. And I feel I have the energy of a 20-year-old. I truly have fallen in love, back in love with myself on top of it. And the last piece of the puzzle, I'm sure you're kind of wondering about, having my best friend back in my life. Well, the short answer is yes, she's there. But I can honestly say I knew that was going to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that because I want to be arrogant or cocky. I'm saying that because, and if my whole focus is on being the absolute best person I can be, spiritually, mentally, financially, caring, nurturing, giving, physically active, having time to spend with people, happy, confident, isn't that someone you would want in your life? Was this easy for me to do? I got to tell you, there were some holy jumping difficult days out there, that's for sure. But do you understand the peace I have in my life right now? Do you understand the effect this has had on my life right now? From my well-being, my friends and my family, my friends and family's well-being, and not being concerned with me, but also giving them happiness back. My life has changed forever because of this particular thing. Now, I've just told you one of the most personal things in my life, but this applies to everyone. I really wanted to be open enough and transparent enough to show you that by truly exposing yourself, you will be able to find that answer to the one thing that's holding your life hostage. Melinda, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm beyond grateful to have the share. This is the Radical Chef signing off to you with this quick checkup from the neck up.